Alright, here we go. We're gonna slash some things. Awesome. Wait a minute. Hang on. I'm a guy with white hair and a sword and a coat in a forest, and I'm fighting a dragon. This is basically scale-bound.
So, Devil May Cry 4 on PC. If video games have taught me two things recently, it's that video games are a means for an escape, and also a means to have a power fantasy. I mean, sure, we have video games that are pretty thought-provoking, and often do challenge the everyday perceptions of gamers, which I can admire. But video games have always been a kind of way to express someone who I'm not, if that makes sense. In other words, it's not unusual for a video game to go over the top, or even to not take itself seriously, because that's when it becomes the most enjoyable. And there's not really any genre of video games that really spoke this kind of message to me than character action games, which of course deviated from hack and slash and beat 'em ups. Being a badass hero, racking up numerous combos, pulling off incredible moves, and overall, just watching your power fantasy unfold before your very eyes. And I'll admit, being someone who just recently became a fan of hack and slash character action games, I'm surprised I never played any game in the Devil May Cry series. I mean, I was well aware of its reputation. It was one of the most stylish action games at the time, but I've never gotten a chance to experience the series for myself.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light!
For those not in the know, I'll give you the breakdown. It pretty much defined hack and slash and the action genre of video games, and brought many standards that we're more accustomed to nowadays. Combos, the air juggles, the ridiculous plots but dynamic action scenes, the rivals, the villains, the over-the-top ridiculousness, it all started here, folks. So I figured I'd start my first foray into the series with Devil May Cry 4 after hearing some good things about the PC port and getting it on sale. It's 75% off most of the time.
And let me just say this, right off the bat, the best first impression of this game is the PC port, because it is phenomenally well done. Not only does it feel incredibly optimized, but it runs very well on almost any sort of capable PC hardware. I'm running this game on like an i7 processor on my laptop or something like that, and the game still ran buttery smooth at 60 frames per second. And as a whole, for a game released as a next generation Devil May Cry game, I still think it holds up very well visually. The cutscenes, and on top of all of the stylish combat, definitely show how gorgeous the game looks and feels. It was a great first impression. And I'm only assuming that if you have even better PC hardware or an overall PC setup, you can get this game running at the 70 and 80 frame rate. I know there's some people out there who think that they can get it to the 230 frames, but that's ridiculous. Whoever thought that, let me tell you, is an idiot.
While this was a great first impression, looks aren't exactly everything about a game. Being a character action game, how does the combat as a whole hold up? Well, to say the least, it's very satisfying. It's fast and efficient and never feels repetitive thanks to your unique abilities and movesets. Sword combos are all unique and varied, and it all depends on when and how many times you press the Y button. You can keep pressing the Y button to do a combo, but if you press the Y button once, pause, then press the Y button again, you'll get an entirely different combo. This adds a bit of depth to how you would usually play a hack and slash. Normally you would just rush in, but with Devil May Cry, sword combos feel a lot more strategic depending on how you can knock out enemies. Also, using the gun to continue getting style points keeps the pace going, and I especially found the air combos to be pretty sweet. Nero, the protagonist of the game, who doesn't look like Dante, even has this Devil Bringer ability that melees enemies on the spot and also snatches them right in front of you in order to keep combos going. In a sense, this makes combat to be somewhat endless, as you can keep bringing enemies to your place with the Devil Bringer while pulling off a melee move at the spot. And I gotta say, it's really satisfying to do it in the air. Sorry for the redundancy. The best part of the Devil Bringer, you can use it against bosses whenever they're vulnerable, and it's immensely satisfying to pull it off and watch them fly, more so than any QuickTime event could offer. Nero as a whole is a very solid action star, but when you reach the third quarter of the game, you get to play as Dante himself, who plays entirely different from Nero, and also has 4 unique styles that slightly change up his combat. As a whole, playing as 2 different slashers was fun and exciting, and this was one of the most raw and brutally satisfying hack and slash systems out there. It really made me want to keep the flow going and to keep the combos up, just so I could be more stylish. Though I will admit, it is somewhat deep and tricky to master. I mean, trust me, there are some people out there who can do some pretty amazing stuff. But I find as you continue to gain abilities, it's intuitive enough to enjoy. The boss battles themselves are pretty fun, my favorites being the angelic bosses and the rival battle against Dante, which really amped up the difficulty, though I did find the final boss, while cool, to be a bit slow. While I thoroughly enjoyed Devil May Cry 4's combat as a whole, there were a couple of things I could have done without. First of all, the backtracking. It was kind of unnecessary. There are moments where you need to explore levels in order to hit switches, in order to activate bridges, in order to open certain areas, in order to progress the game, and it's kinda tedious. Not exactly a huge issue, but unless you get familiar with your map, or you just weren't paying attention to that one cutscene showing you where to go, prepare to get lost, and there is no hint system of where to go next from my experience. To its credit, the levels are never that open-ended, but at the same time I would have been fine with it being just a linear adventure.
Not to mention, there were a couple of times in the game where I was traveling around certain areas and the camera angles would just go all over the place, making my control rather strange. In other words, the camera angles can get a bit annoying when they want to get all dynamic. Though it does give me a strange sense of the classic Resident Evil games back on the PlayStation. I mean, think about how those games were created. They were still traversing through different areas, but they did also change the camera angles as well. But your control was different. You had tank controls, so in other words, if you were moving forward with the analog stick or the D-pad or whatever, your character still moved forward and didn't change its direction. So when you have a game like Devil May Cry, when you can go in all sorts of directions, it does get a bit jittery at times. In fact, the original Devil May Cry was meant to be like a Resident Evil game, so I guess that explains that design choice. Somewhat.
Also, as a small nitpick, I didn't find the story to be all that intriguing. In fact, I found myself getting lost about halfway through it.
Okay, so I'm just going to sum up what I caught on from this entire story after my first playthrough. Ready? Go! Okay, so it starts off with like a girl who's she's like an opera singer in a church. And then this guy comes in and he's really late because he had to fight off demons, you know, pesky traffic. And he stands out because he's like a bad dude and all the others are like priests. And then suddenly Dante comes and kills him off. And then he has to fight Dante because he looks like him, like a carbon copy. And then the president, or like the priest or whatever, has to go and defeat the demons that Dante released, and Nero got this weird hand that is like a devil thing because he's a demon apparently, and then he starts slashing things, slash, and then he looks for demons and fights them, and then the saviors have to go in and try to get rid of the demons in the world, and then Dante is trying to find the sword of Yamato, which Nero gets, and then they form the savior.
Granted, I did find the cutscenes to be really well made, showing Nero and Dante being cocky badasses they are, and even some of the cinematic qualities of the game I can admire. Though there are moments in the game where they do nothing but explain exposition, and it does kind of slow down the pace of the game, though not to the point where it makes it boring.
But as a whole, the story itself didn't exactly get me on the edge of my seat. It was more of the stylish combat itself that definitely got me excited about playing this game. And why not? It's a hack and slash character action game. It was meant to be like this. Because after all, it is still one of the finest experiences I've ever had with a character action game, and it has made me a fan of the series as a whole. I mean, I even want to go back and play the original Devil May Cry, Devil May Cry 3. I know for a fact people want to skip Devil May Cry 2, so I'm going to oblige that. Heck, I even want to play the reboot of Devil May Cry, DMC. Yeah. I'm being serious. So as the 4th entry in the series, and not to mention my first entry into the series, I thought it did a damn well job introducing me to the stylish hack and slash combos I've been missing out on. Not to mention the PC version has exclusive modes, like a turbo mode, which makes the game run faster, and a legendary Dark Knight mode, which is the new difficulty, which pretty much gives you more enemies to fight, and gives you more enemies to slash. Think Dynasty Warriors, but a lot more complex and less repetitive. So as a whole, Devil May Cry 4 is a blast. I had a lot of fun playing this game, and I definitely look forward to what the other entries of the series have to offer. Even Devil May Cry 2. And the new DMC.
Hello there, thanks for finishing the video. You can click those 2 little rectangles to see more of my thoughts videos. And if you like what you saw, be sure to comment, like, and subscribe, and also follow me on Twitter for more mini thoughts. Because, you know, sometimes I have too much to say. Too much.